Today we're looking at 7artisans 18mm f5.6 fixed aperture lens. I'm using it on a Lumix S5II, which is an L mount camera, but it is also available on Z and E mount cameras as well. They have sent me this lens in exchange for a review, but they don't get to see the review process beforehand. Throughout this video, we're going to be putting this lens through its paces, taking it out to do architecture and landscape photography and a spot of portraiture as well. We're going to see how well this lens performs in terms of sharpness and bokeh, vignetting, or anything else we can think of as well. And this very first test is seeing what a fully manual lens could be used like as a vlogging test. And the reason I'm out in this weather is because that's exactly what I'm doing now. We're actually shooting on that lens as we speak. Now, using a fully manual focus lens might be advantageous, but there are some benefits as well. That being, the focus point is never really going to jump anywhere because it physically can't. So if anyone walks past in the background, it's not going to jump to them. As I walk, I'm going to talk about my first impressions, which are when I received this lens and opened the box. I was really impressed to find that it was an all metal construction. It weighs 146 grams. They could have saved a little bit of weight going plastic, but I'm really glad they went with the full metal design because it just makes it feel more premium. As a manual focus lens, it's got a very nice, well-dampened manual focus ring with hard stops on either side from 0.3 for its close focusing to infinity. Now, that close focusing distance means that I can do exactly this. The camera is around a foot to, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from my face. I can reach behind the camera on the Lumix camera in a way, hit the focus magnify button, and then get critical focus on my eye. As long as I don't move the camera in or out, that should be completely fine. And I could mark on my monopod and on the lens with a little bit of tape exactly where that point is if I want to be able to achieve the same distance every single time. The features on this lens aren't really plenty. There's no IBIS, there's no autofocus obviously, but it does have a 49mm lens thread, which is really useful for someone like me who likes to use variable ND filters to control their exposure. I really like this lens because I was looking for exactly this type of thing, something simple, elegant, and inconspicuous that I could use for an everyday carry scenario, something I could take into town or on holiday, and also double up to do vlogging situations like this. It should sit nicely in my camera bag alongside my Sigma 150-600 and Samyang 35-150 without adding any substantial amount of weight. Has this vlogging test worked out well? Has the Lumix image stabilization paired nicely with it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to get out of the cold, into the lab, and review some of those photos I've been taking. Okay, so we're out of the cold, we're in the lab, and we're going to review the photos I've taken today just to see how well this lens performed. I'll try to keep it brief. Here is the lens in question if you was curious. A very small lens, very well built, and it's got a little bit of heft to it, which I really like. We'll look at sharpness first. So very close focus and distance. I got close to the wall, took a photo. Everything in the middle was very sharp, sharper than expected. And then as we move closer to the edges of the lens, then we do see a significant drop in sharpness and a significant amount of vignetting as well. Vignetting can quite easily be removed in post, so it's not a huge problem. If you've got a photo editing program like Photoshop, just look for your vignetting tool and you can remove that quite easily. Next, we'll talk about bokeh. Everyone loves bokeh. This is a fixed aperture f5.6 lens, so I wouldn't be expecting miracles. From what I could get though, the bokeh balls were very round and there is a nice degree of background separation, although it's not major and to be totally expected with a lens like this. Barrel distortion is where I thought this lens wouldn't perform well, but it performed very well. Wide angle lenses will often have this phenomenon called barrel distortion, where lines look like they're sort of ballooning out. I took a photo off this bench though and I couldn't really see much. It definitely does have barrel distortion, and that will be exaggerated if you tilt your camera forwards or back. That's standard for a wide angle lens. A top tip, if you're using any wide angle lens, if you put your grid lines on and you can find straight lines in your composition like a wall, make sure that your grid line and that line sort of lines up and you're going to get a more normal looking perspective. If you want to flip that on its head though, you can sort of tilt the camera forward and you'll get these sort of like elongated lines, which can actually be really cool and creative. In terms of flaring, again, I wouldn't expect miracles with this lens. It's not going to perform as well as an S Pro lens or a G Master if you've got a Sony. There is significant flaring and a lack of contrast when shooting into the light and some other aberrations on the lens as well. So that is something to be mindful of. It's also worth reiterating, you can't put a lens hood on this unless you use that 49mm lens thread. However, I think with such a wide angle lens, the reality is you would probably see the lens hood in your photo. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I would be mindful of it. Next, I just wanted to try and work out where the infinity focus started from. So you might think infinity focus means it starts directly from your lens. That's not usually the case. I think it's from around 5 or 6 feet. So we turn the manual focus ring all the way to infinity focus, and I think it's from around 5 or 6 feet. So if you wanted to set it and forget it, it would be useful if you're doing street photography, landscape photography. There's this concept of photo as therapy, and if you want to really simplify your photography process, set it at infinity and just take snaps. Next, I wanted to start using this lens to actually take some more realistic scenarios. No one's looking at lenses under a microscope unless you're an absolute nerd like we are, but realistically no one's looking at your photos with a magnifying glass. First, I tried some test photos, some just portraits, just messing around. It's an 18mm lens. You wouldn't typically use an 18mm lens to do portraiture, but there is a crop mode in the Lumix camera where you can punch in by 1.5 or 2 times on the sensor. And when I looked back on the screen, when I was reviewing the photos on the camera, I was really impressed by how these photos looked. This was the first moment I realised that this lens actually punches above its weight in some regards. So it actually got very nice portraiture. Then I took some photos of a few different churches. I managed to get inside one as well and took this photo down the aisle, which I think did a great job. Unlike other inexpensive lenses I've used, I also found that the image was very clear and very detailed. So again, it's punching above its weight in that regard. I got a couple of detail photos in here. Looked on the back of the camera at the time, especially with these pine cones and these candles, and I was like, the colours look really good. By far the best thing I found about this lens was its ability to render colours. After I took photos of the churches, I had some landscape photography to do, and it just so happened to be one of the best days of the year for doing landscape photography. It was a wintry, frosty winter wonderland, and there was this hanging sort of mist in the air, and I was taking these photos, and at some point I just forgot I was doing camera tests. I ended up staying out way later than I had intended to, and it was just an absolute pleasure to use this lens. The photos I was getting off the back, I was reviewing them on the screen at the time. I was thinking, it can't be that good. It just can't be. I was getting these photos that just had this real sort of dramatic, painted-y sort of look to them. I think it must be a mixture of some of those flaws with, I think it's the detail, the vignetting and the colour rendition. It was making these really lovely compositions. And sure enough, when I got back into the edit, reviewed the photos, they just look great. I uploaded a few onto my Instagram and I didn't even edit them. They just look really, really good. All of the photos in this video have been unedited, just to let you all know as well. Overall, I think this lens is going to be perfect if you want something that is small, inexpensive, but well machined, elegant, and has a lovely tactile experience to it. I also think it is useful if you want to partake in vlogging like me, but you don't want to spend an arm and a leg. As long as you set your focus point, you should be fine. However, of course, if you mess your focus point up, well, that's on you. So I've really enjoyed using this lens. I think it's going to be a really fun everyday carry. I'm really not joking when I say I had one of the best photography experiences in a very long time using this lens out on that day. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. If you've used anything by 7artisans, let me know what you've used and your experience with it in the comments below. And yes, I will catch you all next time because I am overdue with reviews. I've got a drone review, I've got another lens review, and I've got all sorts of videos on the way. So as for now, I will be off and I'll catch you all next time. See ya.